All right, good afternoon. Calling to order the General Government Subcommittee of Appropriations. We're going to jump right into it. We're all running around trying to get all these committees in. We got a little technical work going on, so I'm going to have the Commissioner Reb come up to the table if you don't mind. Y'all, we're starting with Department of Natural Resources, page 14, section 34. Commissioner and friends.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have with me our Budget Director, Ms. Vanetta Pryor, to answer all the hard questions that you all may have today. It is a pleasure to be here with you to talk about the fiscal year 26 budget items of the Department of Natural Resources. As we move into the budget, let me begin by saying how thankful we are to Governor Kemp and OPB Director Dunn for the budget recommendations that we're bringing before you today. And additionally, we're very thankful to this committee and the legislative branch for your continued support of the Department of Natural Resources. And we hope to continue to see that support through these recommendations as well. As you said, Mr. Chairman, DNR's budget can be found beginning on page 14. Each of the divisions reflect adjustments to our agency premiums for our DOAS administered insurance programs and adjustments for the TeamWorks billings as well. If you'll look at line 34.1.2, this shows the elimination of one-time funds for Tybee Island beach restorations in the amount of $4 million. This was pass-through funding last year in DNR's fiscal year 25 budget. Staying on page 14, lines 34.4.1 and 34.4.2, you see a reduction to the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Program. The first reduction is for a little over $1.37 million, which reflects the decrease in the FY24 collections of sale and use tax from sporting goods stores. And the second reduction you see is more than $5.75 million. And that's based on the statute, as it requires a 20% reduction in this program if the tax revenues for those items decreased by 1% from the previous year's collection. So we did see that. You'll see a total reduction for this conservation program in the amount of over $7.12 million. Looking on page 15, line 34.7.2 under Parks Recreation.
Mr. Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
If you may, we may ask a question or two along the way so we can.
What did you just? Where were you just now on 34.1.1 and 34.1.2?
No, he was on 34.4.1, 34.4.2 on those last two, the 1.3 and the 5.7. Yes, sir.
Good. Moving to page 15 on 34.7.2 under Parks, Recreation, and Historic Sites. There's a reduction of $4 million. Again, this was funding in last year's budget that was pass-through funding as well. Next, if you'll look under the subject line on 34.7.3, this is a $45,000 reduction in funds to the Georgia State Games Commission. Again, this was pass-through funds from the FY25 budget. And then lastly, on line 34.9.2, this shows a $216,000 true-up, which is an increase in funds taken in by our Wildlife Endowment Trust Fund to reflect the actual FY24 collections of lifetime sportsman's license revenues. And then, Mr. Chairman, if you pleasure me, that concludes our budget. I know that you don't have the capital projects in front of you, but I'm happy to go over those briefly.
You can touch on them brief. That'd be great.
The first item would provide funding in the amount of $7.78 million for major facility improvements and renovations statewide. This funding is split between DNR and our Environmental Protection Division, with about $6.4 million coming to DNR. These funds will assist DNR with construction improvements, renovations at all of our DNR facilities, buildings across the state, And it also will assist us in replacing some of our aging fleet, as well as many other improvements. The second capital project item is $13.6 million, and that would be for a new construction of a consolidated Region 2 office in Gainesville, Georgia. Currently, in Region 2, Northeast Georgia, our facilities are split in 4 different locations throughout that region. 1 is owned by DNR, 2 are leased from the Corps of Engineers, and 1 is leased from a private entity. If you put all of those together, we're looking at about 17,000 square feet. We worked throughout the summer with the State Properties Commission to look for the most viable option to replace those buildings. Looked into the possibility of leasing some space in that Region 2 Northeast Georgia area. The analysis by the State Properties determined that over a 20-year period, with this construction cost of around $13.5 million, we would come out ahead in the overall in 20 years by about $1.9 million by constructing a new facility. And then just to make it very brief, with all of the benefits that would come in putting all of our facilities under one roof, again, the main thing is to save money overall and to provide great customer service so that all of our customers in Northeast Georgia would have one facility to walk in. And many of you, all of you, have visited our Region 6 office there in Brunswick at the base of the bridge. That's kind of the model that we're looking to do, so it would be good for all taxpayers in Georgia. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that will conclude my presentation.
All right, Commissioner. Any questions? You didn't get off easy.
Thank you. We'll run.
All right. Appreciate you being here. Secretary Ravensburger, please join us. Do you need the computer, or are you good at the table?
Maggie's gonna
Okay.
use that. She'll push him. Huh? Well, we're in great spirits today. I can see that. So, good afternoon, Chairman. It's great to be here, members of the committee. We look forward to presenting our section of the budget. Looking at the budget, you'll see the same statewide adjustments to TeamWorks, billings, and DOAS premiums.
Ms.
And for-
Secretary, I'm so sorry. Can we go to, for everybody following page 19, section 43? Sorry about that.
Are you good? Mr. Chairman, so see the same statewide adjustments to TeamWorks billings and DOAS premiums. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to mention each of those recommended changes. The first thing I wanted to talk about is audits. The first of our requests is additional funding for risk limiting audits. In this upcoming fiscal year, we will have at least 2 statewide elections, 2 PSC commission seats on the November 2025 ballot, and the primary election in May 2026. In prior election cycles, we have used federal HAVA dollars to cover the cost of these RLA audits, but there has been no indication of any additional HAVA funds being dispersed from the federal government in the next year. The cost of these audits is approximately $245,000 for the fiscal year, and we would like these to be recurring funds. $125,000 for the license, and then $40,000 per election in support staff. We're also requesting funds for the optical character recognition audits. This would be approximately $774,500 for FY26. Funding was provided last fiscal year that meant we were able to pull off a first of its kind in America, a 100% audit of the human readable text of every contest on every single ballot. It was confirmed, it confirmed the outcome of each race from President Trump's resounding victory down to the county coroner. And what it found actually was that machines count better than people. And if there are any of those that still doubt those results, anyone in the world now can go online and look at every single ballot image for free. In addition to funding these audits, I'm renewing my request for additional election staff. We have an excellent team that pulled off a great election. UGA shared the poll results at the biennial. Over 90% of all Georgians trust the process we have in Georgia. Over 90% of all Georgians voted in less than 10 minutes, and we tracked it. The average wait time on election day was under 2. In fact, Jonathan Turley on Fox News on election night said that Georgia and Florida ran the best elections in the entire country. So we're really pleased with the results, really pleased with what we've done together. Thank you. We have an excellent team, and we did pull off that great election, but we do need more highly talented workers because the skills that they have can ensure that election security and compliance with our new election laws. I am requesting an additional 11 different permanent election staff that will focus on elections compliance and county training. 1 Salesforce administrator for our Jarvis system, as well as additional IT security personnel and a chief information security officers. Those costs can be seen on the screen. Now, to give you also some perspective on where we are right now, we have 28 people in our elections division. North Carolina has virtually the same population as us. They have 72. We have less than half. Adding that a staff of 11, we'd have 39. We'd have about 55% of what they have. Interesting enough, South Carolina, which is half the population of us, has 68. And what's also of interest, in North Carolina, they don't build all the ballots for all 2,400 precincts. That's what we do. And because we have a unified system, we spend a lot more time working with the counties, which we think has led to the high confidence that voters have in the state of Georgia. My final request relates to the Professional Licensing Board staff and the call center. I have requested 1 additional Salesforce administrator for the PLB who is focused solely on ensuring that our licensing system is flexible to any changes in professional licensing and can help meet the new goal system and make it adaptable as we see that we need to make changes. So we are ensuring that Georgians can get to work quickly. We would like to hire them with a salary of $175,000, and that actually includes the 72% burden rate. So basically, in effect, you're looking at a $100,000 salary plus the burden rate. Due to the weather events that interrupted the earlier budget hearings, we didn't have the opportunity to get together to talk about the amended budget in this subcommittee. So I wanted to briefly touch on last year's SB 189 requirements to remove the QR code from the ballot. The governor recommended $47 million for this project, and the House has recommended $32 million. We're still waiting to see what the Senate recommendation is. But I wanted to ensure all the members of this subcommittee that we are aware of the requirements of the project. And I want to make you aware that as it currently stands, the full cost of this project will actually be $66 million. We don't know if anything will be allocated in the interim budget finishing up this fiscal year. If nothing is put in, then we're looking at we would need $66 million to meet the requirements of Senate Bill 189. But I wanted to give you some also background so you could consider some additional options. Our current election system right now is in the 7th year of a 10-year contract. We will start to put the contract out for rebidding in 2028. SB 189 requires us to make several expensive changes to the system for the last 2 years of the contract, primarily purchasing new printers and new scanners. Thinking about taxpayer dollars, and I know that you do just like I do. We're fiscal conservatives, and that's to our credit. I wanted to perhaps have you consider alternative solutions that would ensure the continued trust of the voters in both elections, but also be fiscally responsible. I think we can do both with the audit of the human readable text for every statewide election. In fact, I'd like to just go back to the QR code enhanced voting, audit that we did. We actually did an audit of all 5.1 million ballots, which had on average about 14 races, which is 70 to 75 million choices, selections that voters had. We had a total of 87 errors or discrepancies, depending how you want to call it. 86 of those were with the hand-marked paper ballot system. They were not with the QR code that was used for in-person voting. And the one that was on the QR code was actually, I wouldn't call an error. It was that someone hand wrote in or typed in their selection, and people couldn't cipher out who they exactly meant. So it was just one of those kind of issues. But even that said, if you think that you have 87 discrepancies out of 70 million plus discrepancies, or 70 million choices, it's pretty amazing how high and how accurate our elections are here in Georgia. Going back to this cost of $66 million and the requirements of SB 189, one option would be to actually do nothing and just wait until the contract is completed. And then we could redirect that money to purchasing the best system on the market. Election systems are getting better every year, and we could eventually move to a system that will be purchased through a competitive bid process managed through DOAS that will utilize the latest technology. Another alternative is to update the machines to the newest version of the software. This would reduce the cost to $15 million, which is primarily the cost of staffing. It would ensure that we keep the machines up to date, address any potential future vulnerabilities, and the software would be provided for free from the vendor. This change would help ensure continued voter confidence without drastically changing the voting system or spending money on hardware that could be entirely replaced in 2 years. That would be a saving of $51 million that you could redirect any way you would like. But knowing what we've been through this last year with Hurricane Helene, and me having traveled all throughout the state of Georgia, in fact, I went through Wheeler County just a few days ago. When I went through there, I said, yep, I was in Alamo, Georgia with the governor 2 days after the hurricane hit. He came into Augusta that Monday, and Chairman Prince was there, as were many other reps and senators. And we saw the devastation Columbia, Richmond County, up and down from South Georgia to North Georgia. And knowing that the federal dollars are not going to be extended out for claims, this would be $51 million that could be redirected. And so perhaps that would be a more effective solution, since the machines will have to be, a new system could be, the contract will comes up in 2 years, and then we'll have to decide what we do then. But that'll give you an idea of where we are right now, and there are some options there for you to consider, and I am open for any questions you might have.
All right, we'll start with Chairman Tarvin.
I've got 4 or 5, but I'm going to start with a statement and then just one, and then I just want you to know that I heard, I can't confirm this, but I heard that South Carolina and North Carolina saw what a great job that Secretary Ressenberger did on the election, and they're putting in legislation to cut their number of employees to the same as his per capita, because they think if he can do it, anybody can. The first question, no comment. It's not time. Not time or place. Not the proper time or place. You said this would go back on your audit thing that you the new. It would go back to which election where the ballots were online and.
The one that we just did in 2024, the fall election, what was put in place was a budgeted item to have a human readable text audit.
I remember.
And we partnered with Enhanced Voting. We got it stood up in record time. It's first time it's ever been done in America. And we actually looked at all 5.1 million ballots. That was early votes, absentee votes, and election day votes
For 2024.
for 2024.
You said something about the online, you could look at the ballots as far
And
back.
the ballot images are available right now for the 2024 race.
And that's the first year that's available. There's not any for,
The counties we have the images, but the ballots, the counties actually have the paper ballots themselves. They maintain custody of that.
you don't have a high resolution on anything.
No, that
but
was-
2024.
And 2024 is high resolution, and that was based on what was put into law last year by the
That
General
was so
Assembly.
quick, I'm gonna go ahead and do one more and then I'll be quiet. I certainly, personally think that we're on video, and I'll probably get bashed for this, but I made it very clear how I feel about it. I think we've proven that our election was very safe, and I hate to see us spend $66 million reading ballots because of a QR code or buying something to do away with that. And I'm not good at math, but divide 87 or 88 into 66 million, and it approaches, 8/8 is 64, so it's $800,000 a vote or something to try to do better than 87, which is almost unheard of. And I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask, on this image that you can see online for free,
Pardon me?
this image that we can see online for free that you talked about of the ballots,
Yes.
what do you see? I've never understood
What you would see is the full ballot that people cast. So you'd see the QR code and then who they picked. Who did they pick for president? Donald J. Trump, Joseph R. Biden, or someone else, if there was someone else on that ballot. Then coming down, you'd see all their choices that they had on your ballot specifically. So who was your state rep? Who was your state senator? Who's your county commissioner, county sheriff? Everything that you would have, that's what they'll see on that ballot, and that's available right now online.
So you're talking about I can see
For free.
my ballot.
Not your ballot. All the ballots were cast because the ballot is confidential.
What good is that? I've never understood what exactly good that does anybody.
We made that available because there was an interest by the General Assembly to make sure that was posted, and so we fulfilled state law to do what you, as requested per state law.
Well, I asked questions about it when we had the legislation, and it didn't make any sense to me then, and it still doesn't make any sense to me. But
You could visually count the number of votes that the president got or whoever got, and you can't tell what the QR code was, except online you could tell and see if it matched.
If I may,
Count
Chairman
them,
Parsons, I hear the question. I think the notion at the time probably was for transparency. It's there. If somebody wants to sit in their living room
My God.
and flip through it.
If I may, I wanted to ask you, you talked about this, but I guess I don't know exactly what, I think 52 million you said we could save, that could go to
51, yes.
And that would be, what would it be spent for if we didn't save it? I don't really know what that is.
What I was saying is that if we, to meet SB 189 would require $66 million right now. What we would need, first off, we have to update the software, which is the $15 million, plus we'd need additional hardware. One of those things would be, for example, we would now be going, because we're eliminating the QR code per SB 189, per the date specific that it has to be into law currently.
Right.
Then we would have, then you're actually reading the human readable text because the QR code's gone away.
Right.
We'd actually then end up going with a 2-page ballot. That means that the scanners we have right now, which take 5 to 10 seconds per time you actually put your ballot on there to be scanned, it right now is 5 to 10 seconds. Well, that's going to immediately go over 1 minute because it's a 2-page ballot. There's just a lot more data on there, so it has to record that. Because it has more data, then we're going to need more memory cards as a cost. So we really believe that you need to go back then to get new scanners so you can get it back down to that 5 to 10 seconds. Otherwise, you can have long lines, and we just worked on getting lines down to an average wait time of 2 minutes, and no one's waiting to get their ballot scanned before they leave. And these new scanners will also have additional storage capacity, which you would need for a 2-page ballot. So it'd be a ballot actually which have, when we say 2-page, it'd be 1, 2 both sides as opposed to 2 pieces of paper. But that is just one of those issues. But that would be a savings. What we're saying, I think the appropriate action is update the software so that is, has any potential vulnerability, so you have a secure system, mitigates any concerns people could have about that. But save that additional $51 million, and then through the budget, you could redirect that to some other, location, such as Hurricane Helene. But that is the will of the General Assembly and the governor. But in 2 years, this system's contract with Dominion is up. And at that point, you can then consider, what do we want to do? What does the future system look like? What's the availability? Governor Kemp, Secretary of State Kemp, had a commission that he formed, gave some great ideas. You probably would do something along that line, and then decide what you want to do with a new system, and you put it out for competitive, bid.
Okay, thank you.
I got a follow-up question on that before we move on. I don't understand how taking a QR code off of something, so if we're removing something, makes the ballot longer. Explain that to me.
It's a full-face ballot then, in effect, what's called a full-face ballot. So all the races would be shown, and then your box of who you chose. So all 3 presidential, all state reps. So the ballot just gets longer as you go through. Plus it would list the full constitutional amendment and things like that add additional length. We can actually send you a copy in our sample pack. I thought we had it listed, but we did for the subcommittee. We showed them the picture of that.
Chairman Yerda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary of State. I'm going to pivot to professional licensing, and you mentioned a Salesforce developer in the budget. Tell me, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? And certainly that professional licensing has been somewhat of an issue for some of us, and can you elaborate on your plans for professional licensing?
We are hopeful that one of the members will be introducing a bill for licensing reform. We think that's really important. I know that right now tort reform's top of your list, but we think that we should have licensing reform. We formed a committee 2 years ago, bipartisan, both chambers, and then the House and the Senate formed theirs, and we came up with many of the same, comments that we need to streamline the licensing so people can get their license quickly, streamline the process, and allow, to have administrative issuance of licenses when the board hasn't met and hasn't issued a license with a certain time period. Also, just in the weeds, once the governor puts someone on the board, if they end up going rogue, for the lack of a better word, the governor cannot replace them. They would fill out the remainder of their term. And so that is something that I think most members believe, that if the governor puts them on, there should be some vehicle for removing them, and it logically would reside with the governor. Things like that, just to make it more operationally efficient, to streamline that. But we're on the Salesforce platform. We have the system designed for us, but as you're working through that, but also as you add additional updates to the law, as you add additional license there, we have to be able to make sure that it's adaptable or malleable to handle additional, changes that we might want to implement to further improve the license holder experience. Our number one job as it relates to corporations is getting people their corporations. As it relates to license holder, doing it as quick as we can, and to streamline it so that it's more consistent across all the different licenses. So there's a template of that, so we can just be more responsive to, our constituents, your constituents.
I will echo that concern. I don't think there is a single subject matter complaint that I get more of than licensure. It's in a bad place.
That's one of the reasons is we get 30% of every dollar that people are paying for their license fee. The rest goes back to the general fund. And so it's always been historically underfunded. And so that's why we have additional resources.
Back to the QR codes for a second. Obviously, it is up to the will of the body, but if I'd like to know what your plan is. If you're holding the pen, what are you putting on the paper? Are you kicking this till the end of the contract? If you're making the final decision, are you not implementing that and waiting for new?
No, if the state law does not change, then we need $66 million.
I'm sorry, I'm not being facetious. I'm asking you, regardless of that law, what is your opinion on that?
I believe that probably the most, I would recommend that you take our alternate about $15 million to update the software code, and then we can review this. You'd also could form a study committee before the expiration of this, so we really know what you want to do for 2028. But I also think that we need to fund the audits by enhanced voting that we did this last year, because what that showed conclusively is that our election systems are dead on accurate. 87 discrepancies, 86 of them were with the hand-marked paper ballots. Virtually none of them were with the QR code system. That's how accurate it is. But when you have Jonathan Turley on Fox News singing our praises, the state of Georgia, that Georgia and Florida run the best elections in the entire country, you should be really proud of that, and you say, we're doing a good job. When over 94% of all Republicans, 88% of all Democrats trust the election process, I think we've hit a high mark. And so I think you really are in a position where I think we wouldn't want to invest $66 million, then 2 years later, we decide to go with a totally different system. If you're making a decision now that that's what the will of the body is, to continue on with this company, then that's another decision. And so you're really coming to the proverbial fork in the road on making that decision. But whatever you do, if state law is not changed, but I would recommend you modify the date and move it out 2 years, and then that could then be, have time to really review this and decide what system you want to use going forward. New technology being developed all the time. When we put that out to bid back in 2019, there's only 3 companies in the entire U.S. that really had a system that could handle statewide, and we only got 2 bids. The other company, talked a good game, but come bid closing time, they never submitted a bid. But I think you may get more people that are doing this. There are people that are working with different technologies. So I think we'll have an awful lot more to consider. And so I think that would be something you might want to consider.
Any other questions?
I'd like to say one more thing if you'll let me. You don't have to.
To my friend.
All right, where I was going with that, when we voted on this bill, we didn't talk about $66 million. We were talking about 20 to 30, and that's what I remember, and that's all I'm going to say. I just don't know how we get to the point that I'm not doubting it's going to cost $66 million, but if I may be mistaken, and I would like to know, but I think we were told 20 to 25 to 30 $million, but we may not from the Secretary of State's office. Somebody had told us they thought that's what it cost, but maybe I'm wrong. I understand. So,
do you want to speak to that in law?
The latest numbers we've gotten from our vendor is $66 million. The governor put in $47 million, but that did not include the new scanners. But then you go back to customer service, the voter. With the full-face ballot, all of a sudden you're looking at standing there with the machines waiting 1 minute. You're going to have backups of lines, and that's going to be your stop in the system. So, and it takes one line, and you need the cost for more memory cards. So we think that it's appropriate if you go that route, that you then add the additional scanners. And so that's how it goes from 47 up to 66.
Any other questions? I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. We don't have to go to Zoom 3 times to try to hear you this time, do we?
There's some IT staff that's probably, yeah.
I think for those of you that weren't here, I think my favorite thing that happened in that was all of a sudden I saw a palm of a hand over a camera. I think one of your staffers figured out they were on
Right.
and all I saw was the palm of a hand.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having us here.
We're moving on to Department of Driver Services, page 7, section 21. Mr. Moore, Commissioner Moore, appreciate you being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having us. I have with me Stacy Cheek. She's our budget director, as well as Travis Kennedy, our CFO, is back there. You all probably know our governmental affairs and communications director, and that's Shavonda Leslie, as well as our general counsel, Assistant Deputy Commissioner Angelique McClendon. We're happy to come before you. We got a short presentation. I think we provided a slide deck that is available, but you have it. You should have it in your hand. And we're going to go sort of fast and for the sake of time. But
That sounds great.
Our request is only 3 unique requests for $567,189. There is, if you were to move, I always like to provide in the slide deck just some indicators about what the department is doing. So you'll see some performance metrics that are in there, as well as for our own in-person services, as well as our online services. I like to provide those just so that you can see what the department is doing. I'm happy to say that we're 99.9% Real ID compliant in our state, highest in the nation. Certainly helps us when we're trying to do additional things. And we'll go straight to the request. Obviously, page 5 of the presentation just talks about those general enterprise requests from the Department of Administrative Services as well as TeamWorks. We won't go into those, but if we go to the next page, actually 2 pages over, we'll start at line 21.2.2 on the tracking sheet, and it's a request for $263,079 for a SAVE multi-year fee increase. This is something that we've come before the committee and asked for at least twice already. Each year, USCIS is requiring a 50-cent upgrade, and you'll see that last year in 28, it actually goes up 60 cents to run a SAVE case. That is the systematic alien verification for entitlements. You all know any person who does not have proof of citizenship must be run through that system to prove that they are here lawfully. So we at DDS, we have estimated a 12% growth factor for our coming year based on our actual numbers from previous year. And with that, that number comes up to $263,079. Next request is a simple one, and it's one that we hope that you had an opportunity to take a look at, and if not, we certainly hope that it'll be in a center near you soon. But we do have in 23 of our 68 locations, 38 kiosks, self-service kiosks, that is helping us maintain, especially when we have turnover. DDS as a whole has about a 23% turnover rate, but in our first-time driver credential specialists, which are our examiners, that number is 49%. So those are the people that are in the centers doing the work. So these kiosks are a great supplement for the agency. The General Assembly, as well as the government, were gracious enough to give us these machines, and at this point, we're at the maintenance phase in trying to add to them. So our request, if you go one other slide, Travis, these are the locations where they're currently located. Again, we have seen roughly 71,510 persons be able to do their transactions on these kiosks since we've had them in our operation since last March. So we are getting a valuable return for that investment, and certainly we're requesting again $136,110 to continue to maintain those as we increase more across the state. And the last request, Mr. Chairman, is simply a request for address verification, ongoing maintenance. One of the complications that we have at the department is if you're not in person, we want to make sure that those those persons on the other side of that computer or phone is the right person to change that individual's address. After the COVID pandemic, we saw a lot of uptick in the number of transactions that we had online. And obviously, we want people to have that convenience of being online, but at the same time, we want to make sure it's the right person. We have employed technology that allows us to see the individual that's on the other side of that computer or phone, as well as we're acquiring new technology that helps us verify the address that's presented for that individual, such as knowing if that individual's been living at that address for some time. So we're very, very pleased with what we've seen. The request is $168,000 for that. And Mr. Chairman, those are the three requests that we have, and hope for your favorable consideration of them. I'll yield for any questions.
All right. Anyone on the committee? Questions for Commissioner Moore? Chairman, you heard it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir,
Appreciate
Mr.
the
Chair.
job you do.
Thank you.
I was just looking at the map of the self-service kiosk and just looking below the fall line and not a whole lot.
There are 10 new ones on the way that
Okay.
we've approved.
Very good.
That will get below that fall line.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
We
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
that.
Yes, sir.
I do not see any more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate you being here.
Yes, sir.
All right. Moving on. Director Turner, you want to join us? Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission. Come on down.
Chairman, can I bring these?
Please
forward?
do. Michael will handle that for you.
All right.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wiedauer and members. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak before you today. I'm Andrew Turnage, the Executive Director for the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission. And we have three items, relatively simple requests that we'd like to humbly present for your consideration for the Commission today. On the tracking sheet, I believe this is 43.7 on page 19 of 21. Is where those items appear on the budget tracking sheet. The first is an increase for staff members who are participants, vestees in the teacher's retirement system. You can see one of the employer identified increases in contribution rate for those employees in that system. The total for that is $251. The second item reflects an adjustment in the agency premiums with the Department of Administrative Services for insurance premiums. That is $1,100. It's $1,108. And the third and final item is an increase in the agency's rent. We were one of the 8 agencies that were formerly located over at 7 MLK, and that, of course, that entire complex has been leveled to build the new legislative complex. So we have relocated to 254 Washington. We're on the 4th floor, and that third item reflects an increase of $67,541, which is consistent with the increase in our annual rent for the new office space. With that, Mr. Chairman, we would like to thank Governor Kemp, the House and the Senate for support for the Commission. I'll just comment, this is the first full year of funding that the Commission has had since the Commission began in 2019. We really appreciate that support. I did bring copies of the Commission's annual report. That's not a part of the presentation or consideration for this committee, but we think it's really important for you to have the opportunity to look at the work that we are doing with the funding that you're providing to this commission, and we are very appreciative of that. So thank you for that. We humbly ask for your consideration with these asks for fiscal year 26, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Start with Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here. I wanted to ask you, how many employees are employed there for the commission?
Thank you, sir. We have 10 total, including me, at the commission.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, you had just been in the Health Committee over the last, I think it was yesterday, maybe?
Yes, sir.
And one of the things that was discussed there was that there hasn't been the demand for this that was apparently anticipated. And I'm just wondering, how does that affect what you all do there? I mean, I think that seemed to be a general consensus amongst everybody that the demand just hasn't been there.
Appreciate the question. I think the demand references directly pointed towards the market and the growth of the market. Currently, there are just a few patients short of 28,000 registered patients on the DPH registered patient list. And the increase that's going along is changing from month to month. It's a little bit slower during the holidays than it is through the rest of the year. But I think that if you look at the growth over the course of the past year, about 10,000 patients have made their way to the registry. And I think that as the market continues to develop, the access for patients continues to expand as companies open more locations. So I think we've built a model that anticipates the licenses that the commission has been given authority to issue in the HOPE Act, and we appreciate that funding very much. So in terms of what's in place with current law and in terms of what we're asking for, we haven't asked for increases for this year or for the previous year.
May I ask another question?
Please.
And I'm sorry to ask a question related to another committee, but it is information I'd like to know. In that committee, in testimony, I heard somebody say that in order to get this medical cannabis, you have to have a prescription or something from a doctor to get it. Is that correct?
It's a certification, yes, sir. So patient can download the forms from the Department of Public Health website, carry those required forms to their attending physician or specialist. Those have to be signed and submitted by the physician. So the patient and the physician complete those, and those are submitted to the Department of Public Health for review to become registered on that registry. And only a registered patient can lawfully make a purchase at the licensed dispensaries in the state.
That's the way it seemed like it should be, but somebody else testified that you can go down to a gas station and they have all that stuff. I see it advertised, and that you can buy it, anybody can buy it. I mean, so which is true?
They're both true, and I appreciate the question very much. I believe that the items that are referenced in gas station cannabis products refer to hemp-derived products, which the commission does not regulate. We don't have authority to regulate those products. We regulate only the production licensees and the licensed dispensaries, so we don't have oversight for the hemp market. But my assumption and understanding is that those references would be in reference to those products. For those products, nothing more than an age requirement is my understanding of current law for an individual to make a purchase at any of those locations.
Maybe one more. But are they not all? I can't remember what those three letters, low THS or whatever that is. Aren't they all? I mean, aren't they all that kind of product though?
I think one of the distinctions that's really important to note, for the commission, we have very stringent rules that are focused on ensuring patient safety. They're also in place to ensure compliance with the law. One of those requirements is the 5% THC level. That only applies to the products at the entities that we regulate and the products that they manufacture. Those don't apply to the entities that are selling products outside of our regulated marketplace. To say it differently, you would really have to look at a certificate of analysis, provided that one exists, to determine what the THC levels are for those products.
Well, I'm sure you all are doing a great job. No, this has not, but I'm just trying to understand it better.
Yes, sir.
I see those things advertised and just trying to understand it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the questions.
Chairman Parsons, I would contend that I think what you see is a market that's trying to capitalize off of us doing this in a legal, regulated way with medical cannabis, and you see knockoffs, whether it's hemp or what have you, trying to really just kind of cash in on us having passed that legislation. But nonetheless, appreciate you. I know it's been a long, a little bit arduous process for you.
Thank you for the kind words. We appreciate that.
All right, seeing no more questions, you're off the hot seat.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Sullivan. Page 4, Section 12, Department of Administrative Services. How are we?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Rebecca Sullivan. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Administrative Services. And with me today at the table is Paulette Petty, who is our Chief Financial Officer. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today to speak about the recommendations outlined in the FY26 budget for DOES. Section 12, pages 4 and 5, as mentioned by the Chairman, there are only 2 changes recommended to our FY26 budget, and I hope to be brief. The first one I'll speak to is Section 12.6.1, pertains to risk management services. As I mentioned the last time I was before you all, the governor's recommendations for FY26 provide funding for House Bill 451 that was passed last year to provide a PTSD benefit to first responders. RMS is administering a program to provide that benefit for the state employees who are eligible under statute, and this appropriation funds that effort for FY26. So we fully support the governor's recommendation to invest in that program. The second item pertains to the Human Resources Administration Division of DOAS, or HRA, Section 12.5.1. That line increases funds to recognize additional revenue from merit system assessments based on increased statewide salary to support human resources initiatives in the total amount of $409,000. HRA, or the Human Resources Administration Division, what we do is we administer enterprise-wide human resources programs and provide agencies with resources and tools to attract, develop, manage, and retain a high-performing workforce. And that division is primarily funded through merit assessments to agencies, which are calculated based on a percentage of employee salaries. So this increase reflected in the FY26 budget is attributed to across-the-board common changes, and it will allow us to enable our to maintain our enterprise HR services at our current level, as well as push forward with some of our strategic initiatives. One of HRA's responsibilities is to produce the annual workforce report, and the FY24 report is now available on our website. It has a lot of detail about the state's workforce on averages as well as by individual agency. If it's okay with the chairman, I'd like to very quickly share some key encouraging insights from that report. I think, as you were all aware, over the past several years, the state has really faced major challenges in recruiting, hiring, and retaining quality talent. This was reflected in high voluntary turnover rates, declining applicant pools, and a continuing reduction in the number of full-time employees in budgeted positions. I think that strategic investments and actions taken since then to bolster employee recruitment and retention efforts really do appear to be improving net hiring. We're seeing a slowdown in retirements and increasing employee retention. The COLAs approved over the past several years have resulted in an increase of median salaries for executive branch full-time employees in the amount of $5,766 since July 1st of 2022. For the very first time in 8 years, the overall turnover rates were below 20% for FY24, trending down from a peak of 25.3% in FY22 to a rate of 18% in FY24. The voluntary turnover rate was 13.2% in FY24. This is a decrease of over 6% from the FY22 rate of 19.9%. In addition, for the second consecutive year, new hires exceeded separations with 1,032 more hires than separations. And as a result of that, state employment levels for established budgeted positions are starting to return to the pre-pandemic levels. So this is all, I think, very encouraging news. It indicates that the collaborative efforts are yielding some positive results, and I appreciate the opportunity to share that information with you. And that's all I have. I want to thank the committee for your continued support, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions. I'm just going to ask one simple one. So you said 13% was voluntary.
Right.
So you let 5% go?
The voluntary, so they are left for some reason other than of their own volition, yes.
Got it. All right. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Department of Revenue. Who's hiding back there? Oh, there's Frank. Commissioner O'Connell, come on down.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the governor's recommendations for the Department of Revenue for the fiscal year 2026 budget. My name is Frank O'Connell. I serve as the State Revenue Commissioner, and I'm joined today by Keisha Beavers, our Chief Financial Officer, who's here with me at the desk, and also Joe Snowden, our Director of External Affairs and Communications, is here in the audience. Now, DOR's budget items for fiscal year 2026 are on pages 17 and 18 of the fiscal year 26 budget tracking sheet. And as the other agency heads did, I'll skip over the adjustments that are common to all state agencies. I'm sorry if I'm going in and out. Does that sound okay?
So I always tell myself when this starts happening with somebody that I'm going to give some educational speech on speaking into these microphones, but it's when there's a burst of air, it will cut off for a moment. So you don't have to get too close to it; it'll pick you up.
Okay. In that case, I'll back up a little bit. That sounds better. Oops. Our first item is on line 42.1.3. And there you'll see an increase of $7,886. That's for Georgia Building Authority rent. And this is due to our office relocation resulting from the construction on Capitol Hill. We've since moved to the 47 Trinity Washington building, and the higher rent reflects an increase in the square footage of our office space. Our annual lease will rise from $11,437 to $24,650. Next, our next item is on line 42.4.3. That's in local government services, and that is a reduction of $64,523, and that's for the Fireworks Trust Fund. This reflects a lower than expected fireworks excise tax collections. And as I'm sure you know, every year the amount is trued up for what was actually collected, and then the trued up amount is remitted to the Fireworks Trust Fund. The third item is in the area of motor vehicle registration and titling, and that's on line 42.6.3. It's an increase of $2,624,900 for maintenance and support of the driver record and integrated vehicle enterprise system, which we call DRIVES. Now, the department entered into a 7-year contract extension with our vendor Fast Enterprises beginning in fiscal year 2025. And this was following the expiration of the previous contract in June of 2023 and a one-year extension through June of 2024. Now, currently, we lack sufficient funding to absorb any additional support in the number of full-time equivalents that we get through our vendor FAST. And the additional funding is needed to manage the increasing costs of maintaining the drive system under the extended contract. Then on line 42.6.4, there's an increase of $315,619 for postage costs related to the motor vehicle registration and licensing production. That's the license plates and the decals. Documentation was submitted to us from GCI along with a request. That's Georgia Correctional Industries. And the contract does allow for them to request increases based on their costs. One component was a 0.8% increase in the producer price increase. The other portion was a U.S. Postal Service rate hike, and that increase amounted to $531,688, bringing the total cost increase to $604,906. The last item is a request for an additional appropriation of $3,595,426 for maintenance and support of the integrated tax system. Our vendor for this system is the same one we have for drives, Fast Enterprises. This request follows the recent extension of our contract with Fast, and that covers the integrated tax system for the next 4 years, and includes increased costs for the additional full-time support equivalents needed to manage the ITS contract effectively. Now, in fiscal year 2025, we had 9 support full-time equivalents from Fast Enterprises, and in fiscal 26, we're requesting an increase to 12 full-time equivalents to support modernization, analytics improvements, and the implementation of legislative updates. And one thing I'll note, I asked myself what would I want to know if I was sitting in your shoes. What can I compare these requests to? Well, Fast Enterprises, with regard to the integrated tax system, the way they charge us is based on the number of employees that they have at our location. And as I mentioned, we are requesting an increase to 12 full-time equivalents. I asked my CIO, what are the number of equivalent FTEs that other states have? And of the total of 34 states that use Fast Enterprises, so they are kind of like Microsoft in the state tax administration field. But the average of the FTEs he was able to get to numbers for 31 states. And the average among the other states was 17. So even with an increase to 12, we'd still be operating at about 70% of what other states use in terms of resources from Fast Enterprises. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'll be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Commissioner, I'm not seeing anybody lighting up right now, so appreciate you going through, appreciate you being here, and I know we will continue to have conversations as we move forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. Move on to Department of Labor, page 13, section 32. Commissioner. page 13.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We look forward to this opportunity to speak with you today. If I may, I'd like to just briefly kind of recap where we are at the Department of Labor. We've been through a number of challenges over the last year or two, and we made some great progress in the meantime. When we first arrived at the Department of Labor in January of 2023, we had no idea what we were walking into. One of the primary issues we faced was a staff that had very low morale, that were frustrated. They did not feel empowered to solve problems. We were very siloed internally, and there was just not a lot of cooperation or coordination. And so we put a lot of effort immediately into changing that culture, and have been extremely successful in that. One of our biggest challenge, of course, was the loss of Commissioner Thompson late last year after a battle with pancreatic cancer. But it is a testament to his leadership that he assembled a team of fantastic leaders who are committed to carrying out his vision. As I mentioned, we worked really hard on pouring into our staff, and as a result, the morale has drastically improved. Where they feel valued, they feel heard, and they know that their leadership has their back. And we can actually quantify that in looking at our turnover rate. Overall, we have a turnover rate of 17%, but in our full-time permanent employees, our turnover is only 11%. And this is despite the fact that we have put a lot more work on those employees that are there. Over the last 2 years, in order to live within our budget constraints, we have seen our staff levels fall from about 960 in January of 2023 to about 750 today. Most of that, almost all of that, has been through attrition, simply not replacing employees as they have retired or transferred out, and just asking the existing employees to step up. We have worked hard on increasing efficiencies, really doubling down on training, and that has also paid significant dividends. A year ago, we were looking at a time lapse on initial claims. USDOL requires us to process claims within 48 hours of submission, and a year ago we were looking at between 15 and 35 days behind on processing claims, which obviously causes a lot of frustration for our customers. I'm very proud to say that today we are processing claims within 24 to 48 hours, and on really good days we're processing claims as they come in. Also, want to touch base as one of the things that Commissioner Thompson jumped into right off the bat was recognizing that our system was archaic and needed to be replaced. The system that we currently process claims on was built in 1982. And so anyone that was here during the pandemic and saw how frustrating it was to deal with the Department of Labor understands what I'm talking about. We went from a period where we were processing 1,100 to 1,500 claims a day to when the pandemic hit, that jumped to about 15,000 a day. And when we're processing claims on this very old system, our staff are having to go in and out of several different systems and up to 10 different screens to process a single claim. So it's very redundant, it's very labor intensive, and it's very hard to squeeze any efficiency out of that. However, we have managed to do just that. We last year launched our UI modernization project, partnering with TCS to develop a new modern system that's going to be much more intuitive and efficient workflow, give us the opportunity to communicate with our customers in ways that are convenient for them instead of by fax and hard copy mail. And that is going to pay tremendous dividends because that's going to allow our staff to focus, instead of on data entry, on dealing with adjudication, dealing with unusual claims that have special circumstances, and things of that nature. We have, when we roll that out we're currently scheduled to roll that in April of '26, that is going to gain even more efficiencies, and it's going to allow us to spend more time with each customer. I would also like to thank Governor Kemp and the members of the General Assembly for the investment they made in us in funds for upgrading our facilities around the state. We had a number of facilities that were in really bad shape that, frankly, I would not want to walk into as a customer. They were very dirty and dingy and drafty and just not pleasant places to be. And so we have put a lot of effort in the last year in replacing HVAC units, replacing roofs, fixing leaks, parking lot repairs and that nature thing. So it's somewhere that you can be proud of to come onto our facilities. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to our CFO, Kate Furman, to address our budget request.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Chairman, as you said, we are on lucky page 13 of the tracking document. We only have statewide items. I'm happy to go through them, but I'm also happy to do what you would like.
Yeah, I think really we just as brief as possible.
Certainly. So
I think most of these are statewide changes.
They are statewide changes.
So
okay, so that's what we have. Wanted to just highlight a couple of things. First of all, as you may know, Georgia Department of Labor does collect revenue and remits it happily monthly to the state treasury. Through the month of January, we have collected about $19 million that we have remitted to state treasury. We are on track for collecting about $30 million this year. So those funds come from administrative assessments, penalties, and interest, but that provides funds for you to obviously use and appropriate, and for the governor's office to use and appropriate. I do have about 4 items that we shared with OPB back in the budget planning time in the fall that we would like to ask for, and those are as follows. We wanted to get succession planning money. About 42% of our leadership team is eligible for retirement as we speak, and so we wanted to be able to develop those leaders that are not quite an executive team but provide a very smooth transition and provide leadership for the agency. We've also asked for a financial reporting unit, and that unit, we've asked for 3 individuals. It's about $300,000, and no, we're not paying accountants $100,000 a year apiece. Their salaries would be about $57,000. They'd be accountant 3s, which is an advanced level, and the $300,000 obviously includes benefits, regular operating, and other such. We have also asked for constituent services staff. That would be 2 individuals. And that's a little bit over $200,000. And then lastly, we've asked for IT transformational dollars. As Lewis mentioned, as Commissioner mentioned, we actually are in that process of unemployment modernization, going from a 1982 COBOL-based mainframe system to a modern cloud-hosted Java system. That's going to require quite a skill set change, and we do need some upfront investment. Down the road, we believe we can reap savings from retiring the mainframe, but that's going to take a little while, so we do need some upfront money in order to make that happen. The total of those items is just under $1 million, which is about 1/30 of the revenue that we will put into the state treasury. So I hope you'll consider that. Love to share any more information, but thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for yours. Any members? Any questions? You are so,
Thank you, Mr.
so
Chairman.
permitted.
One thing, I'm an equal opportunity basher. I will tell you that we'll have to brag on you, and you've gone from being pretty close to the top of calls to not hearing from anybody. And you've been taken over by licensing, so I don't know if that's a good or bad for Mr. Raffensperger. I was going to blister him a little bit, but saw fit not to say anything else while I could still be on the committee. But y'all have done a good job, and it shows up when we don't get the calls. Thank you, sir. And ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I see no other questions. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Last and least, Director, come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I know we're a little late in the afternoon, so I'm going to get right to the point and try and be brief. If you look at page 2 of the tracking document, line 13.6.1, we only have one request for the big budget, and that is for an additional $105,000 to go towards IT support maintenance for what will be coming online at the end of this year is the new e-filing system you all use. This represents the delta between the amount of money we have available in the current budget and what we need to fully fund that annual IT support and maintenance through the new vendor. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Chairman, you're up.
I've just got one. Thank you for what you do. How many employees do you have working with you in your department now?
Right now, we have 20 at the commission.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Would you like to add anything else?
I'm good. It's been a long week.
All right. Well, Mr. Monty, I appreciate you being here. I don't see any other questions. Committee, I will make a quick announcement. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., we'll get through the last couple of things. We go in at 9, so we will need to be brief. Plan on, when is it, next Tuesday? Is it Tuesday? Yes, work day on.
Notice I didn't give the ethics man or the revenue people any hard time.
That's a veteran right there.
But Tuesday, we will probably have a long-ish meeting. We've got some bills to hear, but we also will be hearing 5 compensation resolutions. That is our subcommittee. I'll have commentary on that on Tuesday, but for those of you that are new to the committee, I guess it's just you, but you've been around long enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Dealing with compensation for the wrongly incarcerated. So something I don't know that we should really be judge and jury on, but fortunately, Chairman Dempsey dropped a bill, I believe, yesterday that I co-sponsored to try to help get us out of that posture. So nonetheless, plan on that Tuesday, and everyone else, have a good evening. We stand adjourned. I have no idea. Do you? Yeah,
406 here.
For same room, 8 a.m.